wind up with. To begin with, there will be a very, very small presentation as to what is the theme of this year's mental health and how we all can work together to achieve our targets to help the community have better emotional well-being. The theme this year is mental health in this unequal world. It is unequal, isn't it? Why do we say that it is unequal? And as we have seen during this COVID, a lot of inequalities have been focused. They are in the focus, they are in the forefront. We see treatment difficulties in people of certain strata. So what are all the factors which create this kind of inequality? Race, ethnicity, rich, poor, healthy, unhealthy, sexual orientation, and gender identity. A lot of people with gender identity disorders are shooed away from hospitals, are not taken seriously, even for physical illnesses. For mental health issues, they do not know how to approach the professionals at all. Accessibility to basic amenities, especially healthcare, all having a tremendous impact on the mental health. So we see that there is a clear-cut demarcation between who can have accessibility to treatment, where mental health issues are common to all. We can see even children suffering from depression, even elders suffering from depression and anxiety and fear, but we do not. People just brush them under the carpet and say that, no, it's fine. We don't have to take treatment. We don't have to go. So what is it that we need to do? WHO calls for acceptable, accessible, affordable, quality healthcare for one and all. At Roshni Counseling Center, we do see several stratas of people walking in daily for treatment. And as much as possible, we see to it that they get treatment irrespective of the fact whether they are students, whether they are having diverse sexual orientation, or they have affordability or not, or whether we can treat them or not. All of these are secondary. The first thing is we try to give them their well-deserved help, the well-deserved assistance. So as WHO calls for 3 A's and Q, acceptable, accessible, affordable, quality healthcare, we need to question ourselves now. Like, are we there? Are we able to have it? Are we able to deliver it? Do each and every individual on this planet have the access to treatment for mental health issues? Now let's see what is the impact of inequality. Treatment gap for mental illness is almost 85%, and that's quite a high number. Many people with mental illness do not receive the treatment that they are entitled to. Not only are they not able to reach out to the mental health healthcare professionals, but also there is a stigma to it. And they are told that they do not deserve treatment. Together with their families and carers, continue to experience stigma and discrimination. We are going to talk about that. The gap between the haves and the have-nots grows wider, and there is a continuing unmet need in the care of people with the mental health problems. And this is a global problem. This is not only in India. In India, it is much more. But there is a gap. 85% of the population does not get help or seek help at the right time as they deserve to. Most of them are also locked up inside the house, either by themselves or by their family members. This is really a very worrisome situation. Impact of stigma. What is stigma? Stigma is holding back from going out and seeking help, thinking how others would judge them if they know that there is a mental illness. Simple thing as I've been crying every day. People do not want to acknowledge that. Relatives don't want to acknowledge that. They are just told that it's okay, you are just a crybaby, you keep crying. And when there is a huge gap between men seeking help also. Men are not supposed to cry. Men are not supposed to express. So crying is a sign of weakness. So a lot of men, that means here we are talking about gender discrimination. There is a huge gender discrimination. So you are not supposed to show any signs. If you are having an anxiety or a depression or a panic attack or a fear, you are not able to show it or talk about it to people. And going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist might just mean that you are not fit to be in the society. So they would rather suffer in silence than talk about it. We are now going to see what are the effects of this stigma and discrimination. What is the impact of stigma and discrimination on physical and mental health? Educational opportunities, yes, they do get affected. There are so many concessions available for children and adolescents and even youth with learning disabilities, but most parents do not want to avail it. Recently also we had a case where the assessment was done, and for so many years the parents could not figure out why there is academic difficulty. And when they were told that the child has academic difficulty because of learning disability and they can avail CBSE, State Board, ICSE concessions, they did not want to do that because they thought that the child will be labeled. But the disability is much more than what the society may label or not label. So educational opportunities are at stake. Current and future earning and job prospects are at stake. And family life definitely gets messed up if there are constant conflicts without understanding the underlying reason for it, without understanding that there may be a treatment for it. So impact of stigma and discrimination also holds people back from getting treated. How can we help? We are, as professionals, mental health care professionals, very grateful to platforms like Vishwatalk, where we are able to share awareness, knowledge. Knowledge is power, knowing what is what, knowing what is mental illness, knowing what can be treated, knowing what cannot be treated. This knowledge gives you the power to bring a change in individuals, in societies. Discussing openly reduces the secrecy surrounding it. The more we hush things, the more complicated it becomes. Normalizing conversations around mental health is the way forward. Yes, it is okay. Yes, it is okay to have a depression. It is like a blood pressure or a sugar or a thyroid issue. You can get treated for it. Normalizing conversations. People around us should be encouraged to talk about these things. Children should be encouraged to talk about these things. All of us need to come together to do that. We need to be on the same platform to achieve this goal of helping people to come out and talk about their conflicting mental health issues. Over to Dr. Sri Lakshmi for the next couple of slides, where she is going to talk about mental illness, the unspoken tragedy. Over to you, Dr. Sri Lakshmi.
Thank you, Dr. Jayanti. She just drew a background picture of how much is stigma and how much there is a, how people treat patients with mental illness. But what is this magnitude of problem we're actually talking about? We are a huge country with a lot of people in it. So is there really a mental illness in the country or not is something that you need to know. So to know that first, you have to understand that mental illnesses are medical illnesses. Though in mental illness, we are a group of people treating, we are counselors, we are psychologists, we are psychiatrists, we are treating. That does not take away the essence that it is a medical illness like any other. Your brain is a part of you, your mind or any action of the mind, like your thoughts, like your emotions, like your behavior, comes from some disorders in the brain where there are chemical changes happening, where there are connections happening, connections are disarrayed, emotions come out. Now, the problem with mental health is there is a very thin line between what we call as normal and abnormal. We don't understand because most of us feel most of these emotions in our daily life. Tell me how many of you have not felt angry since today morning, or not felt, irritated, or not felt unhappy, or not cried a little, or not slept properly at night. So these are all symptoms we go through every day. So when another person comes to you and tells you that I've been feeling like this, you immediately assume that they're actually going through the same thing that you're going through. That's a temporary sleeplessness or a temporary sadness. And you tell them, oh, look, this is all in your mind. And the positive soch na yaar. Look at me. I am thinking I'm having so much problems, but I am able to change my mind. But you're not. You also try. It is you who's not doing it. So you are doing it because you're still healthy and you still have the ability to fight with the stress. The person who is depressed has lost the ability to fight this, to fight back their stress. And they have gone into a situation where they're no longer able to help themselves. And by telling them that you're responsible for your own actions, you've actually increased the problem. So problem in mental health is not the illness so much, but the people around it, that is you and me. So let us focus on how we can help them. But before that, we need to know what we are dealing with. And the data I'm presenting is from the Lancet. If you know, it is an internationally recognized journal, and it is the 2017. So the numbers have drastically changed from then because of the COVID pandemic also, which has brought all mental illnesses to the fore. It shows, please look at the number, 197.3 million people suffer from mental disorders in India. 1 in 7 Indians are affected by mental health disorders of varying severity, very mild depression or anxiety to severe conditions like schizophrenia, but 1 in 7. Assuming that the current participants are 77, you just do the maths of how many of us are already going through. 45 million people in India suffer from depression. Almost that many suffer from anxiety. 7 million suffer from bipolar disorders. 3.5 million have schizophrenia. And these figures have all doubled from 2011 onwards, 2007 onwards. Where are all these people? What is happening to them? Do you see them around you? Do you talk to them? Do you have them in your offices? Do you have them in schools? Are your children married to them? Or are you one of them who's taking treatment, who's not willing to take treatment? When you decide to increase the stigma by not acknowledging your own illness or the illness in your family member, thinking, log kya kahenge, you're adding to the numbers that you see on your screen. These are the people who are a very small percentage of them actually gets help. Like Dr. Jayanti has already told you, treatment gap is about 85%, which is actually ranging from 80 to 95%, which means that if 100 people have mental illness, only 10 are getting treated. What are the remaining 80 doing or the 90 doing? They're at home. They're at home becoming a burden, or they're left by family members on the roads if they're severely mentally ill. And you find them roaming on the roads, lost, unable to fend for themselves. What happens to these people? What happens to the people who are at home? Because we are still a country who believes in a family structure, one member of the family stays back to look after this person. Because you can't leave that person out. He may be aggressive, he may harm somebody, he may harm himself, he or she. So in the process, what happens is the person who's staying back also loses a livelihood. Imagine a farmer's family where all members need to work to earn. And in that, if only the father is able to go because he's relatively normal, the son has illness, the mother stays back to look after them, they have lost 2 sources of income. There is only one source of income feeding 3 mouths. Can you imagine the depths of poverty to which they will fall? So if they will fall to, let us consider, say, a family in somewhere in Adilabad district. They've fallen to these depths of poverty they cannot afford. Okay? These are true life examples that I'm giving you. Not from Adilabad, but this was from a different district where when I used to work with the mental health hospital in Eragata, they never used to get the child for treatment. Every time she would come, the girl child was ill here, and parents would come, and she would be in a very bad catatonic state. Catatonic means not able to speak, not able to move, not able to eat, and urinating in her clothes. And every time we would counsel them saying that your daughter should take treatment, you should come for regular follow-up, you should regular follow-up. The last time, the 4th or the 5th time after seeing the child's condition, which deteriorated with each episode every year, the 4th year, I completely lost my cool and I shouted at them, much to my regret, saying that you are very irresponsible parents. You're not being getting the child. Look at the condition of the child. It's because of you, they say. The mother has to stay back. The father is earning. We don't have money to eat. Where do you think we'll pay that 100 or 200 rupees per person in a bus fare to actually come and take treatment? This is the state of a person with mental illness in our country. Look at a person or compare it to another person who belongs to a very posh locality in Hyderabad. Daughter is not well. shut behind four doors, does not want the four walls, sorry, that they don't want the child to come out because they lose their name in a society and they don't want anybody else to know. The child continues to suffer. So this is what stigma is doing to us. This is what inaccessibility to mental health is doing to us. So when we talk of severe mental illnesses in an unequal world, they are more unequal than the unequals. Please keep that in mind. Yes. Now, why am I using such strong words is that unless we break these barriers of stigma in our heads, unless we treat them as patients who deserve equal rights as, say, a person with diabetes or a person undergoing dialysis or a person undergoing treatment for tuberculosis, unless we break the stigma and confidently take our child or relative or ourselves to a psychiatrist nearby, maybe government, maybe private, till then, this chains of stigma will not break. The numbers on the screen will keep rising and they will not come down. So please keep that in mind when we have this discussion further. Barriers come from both sides. Government policies. Fortunately, we have a new Mental Health Care Act, which has made it mandatory that every district should have a hospital having a mental health specialist. But do you know the number of psychiatrists per 1 lakh population? It is 0.3. How many should be there? At least 3. So we are 1/10 of the required numbers. We are there, and leave alone the psychologists and the special educators and the clinical psychologists who are all very much concentrated in the urban areas, because the rural areas don't even have the awareness that they are needed. So they will not even be able to practice there. So 0.3 psychiatrists per 1 lakh is the dismal state of affairs of our country. However, this is improving now because mental health facilities are being developed everywhere. So this is from the policy side. Not only that, do you know that even our fellow doctors are not much trained in psychiatry? So when they're not very sensitive to this mental health, I'm sure all of you have had an experience of going to a physician who says, look, don't take this clonazepam. Tumhara brain ko na wo sare nasse kharab ho jayenge. It is as though I'm treating to cause you damage, right? So it is like that. And we don't follow them. This was the lack of structure in our training also, which is also changing, fortunately. So our fellow physicians don't know much about psychiatry. Our government was not doing much about it, which is fortunately doing now. So the barriers started from our side. But even if you provide all facilities right at the doorstep of the people, like Roshni is trying to do now, mental health at your doorstep, unless they're willing to come out, how can we help you? Unless they're willing to reveal that I have a mental illness, how can we help you? But to reveal that they have a mental illness, they have to understand that they have a mental illness, which we don't have. Which we don't have a basic understanding of what is mental illness. So I'm not, I cannot tell you everything about severe mental illnesses. Severe mental illnesses in an unequal world is our theme for the day. I can't tell you everything about severe mental illnesses in the next 5 minutes. But what I'm trying to highlight is any mental illness that causes prolonged disability. What is a disability? Disability is when it prevents you from doing your professional work, from your social work, from your personal work, and you're not able to form relationships, you're not able to maintain them. You can't even maintain basic hygiene. You are nothing but a burden of the family, which is not your fault at all. Then you have possibly suffering from a severe mental illness. Now, mental illnesses can range from what we call common mental illnesses like anxiety disorders and mild to moderate depression to very severe ones like schizophrenia, like bipolar disorders. So there is a variety of mental illnesses. So there used to be a concept about mental illness, which my teacher used to tell me, कि people think कि 4 बीमारियां हैं, 4 दवाइयां हैं, doctor के पास जाओ, वो खिला देंगे, and that patient will sleep for the rest of their lives and they will keep put on weight and become a vegetable. It is not true. Not true at all. Look around you, writers, movie writers, actors, singers, politicians, bankers, lawyers, doctors, engineers. These are only, I am talking of my patients. Okay. And I am one of the many psychiatrists in Hyderabad. There are many more. They've all come for treatment. Not because it does not affect them. And tomorrow, if I am depressed, I will have to go to Jayanti for counseling if I am not able to help myself. So mental illness is very, very common and it does not choose who it will affect. Okay, it is not going to choose the poor man in the slum and affect them. It is going to affect the richest person in the state also if required, because 1 in 7 of us is actually having mental illness, isn't it? So time to acknowledge them. Next slide, please, Jayanti. So what are the various warning signs of a severe mental illness? See, all of us understand common mental illnesses. So it's become very common where even children come up to us, like Jayanti pointed out, and they say that I'm feeling low, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling stressed. And this may be the beginning of a severe mental illness, or it may be a mental illness then and there, or it can be simply an adjustment to a life issue. We will help you decide what it is, right? We don't medicate, or don't give medicines to everyone who comes to us at all, right? We only do it if required, and that too depending on the severity. But some things that you should absolutely look out for and know that this is going to be very severe. One thing that I missed out adding in the slide is drug addiction. Complete use of alcohol, severe use of cannabis, that is weed in local language, and other higher drugs. Okay, this is also an illness. Which makes them want to take it again and again. People having undue suspicions. Suspicion is not just saying, oh, my husband went out, is he talking to somebody? It's not, that is not suspicion. If you're convinced that whatever is happening, even if it is not true, you are convinced that something is wrong is happening. Whenever I go on the road, people look at me and laugh, whether they know me or they don't know me. And then they turn their heads away and they talk something about me. So I know they're conspiring against me. When you hear it, sounds very weird, isn't it? But that is how a person of schizophrenia goes through. He feels the whole world is out to get him, right? So when I give this example to almost every presentation I do. When my first year and first week as a postgraduate in Delhi, where I was, when the patient came in, I asked sister to call somebody, and when the patient sat in front of me and I asked him his name, he gave me a different name. And I asked sister, मैंने तो ये बोला था, इनको क्यों लेके आ गए? अरे वो ऐसे ही बोलता है मैडम, उनको वही नाम है. So I asked him, why did you give me a wrong name? So he said, oh, वो घर में है, मैं अलग body पहन के आया हूँ. See, he's not lying. That is the extent of his break with reality. He feels he has multiple bodies in the house which he wears one at a time. And I just told you that schizophrenia is about 1% in our population. There are many people who think like this or feel like this, but they're not coming for treatment because they're not having access. So please keep that in mind. Hallucinations is hearing things or seeing things or smelling things when they are not really there. And this goes on for a prolonged period. So please don't assume that just because we are, suddenly smelled something which nobody else is able to smell, that is not a hallucination at all. If it is prolonged and if it is affecting your brain, it is affecting your daily lifestyle, you're always worried because somebody is constantly abusing you in your ear, you're turning around, you can't find anybody, that becomes a hallucination. Suicide is a risk, emergency, and a sign of severe mental illness. Aggression, beating people, breaking tube lights, stabbing himself, stabbing the others, all signs of, due to mental illness, all signs of severity. Poor self-care. You find people roaming on the roads, hardly wearing clothes, muttering to themselves, smelling dirty, picking up all garbage and putting it around the belts, around the necks. This is signs of severity. When you have a child or an adult completely cut off from the world, preferring to stay in the room in darkness, not willing to come out, it's a sign of severity. When the patient is or the person is not able to maintain adequate family relationships because of constant fights, you see that a child has started, the academics have started to drop, or they're not able to stick to a job if it's an adult. You have to think, is this illness becoming severe? So this is where me and Jayanti, I think we are down to the last 5-10 minutes, I think. So this is where me and Jayanti will talk together about what each our roles are. I will take it first because I want to emphasize a little bit upon the medical aspects of treatment, because there are a lot of misconceptions about what is the medical management of a mental illness. When in my last presentation, somebody said, I don't believe that it has any medical cause. It is all because of parenting. Don't do that, please. Please update yourself with literature. There's definitely there is a contribution of parenting. There's a contribution of environmental factors. There is a contribution of so many things. But unless you have the tendency, you won't do it. See, the results, the 12th results come out every year. The entrance results come out every year. I won't say only that losses are also big loss, but there are only some children who are doing it. Other children are taking it. I'm sure the others also would have not gotten through, or others also would have failed. But it is 1% of children who are actually attempting or completing the suicide. Why is that? Because they have a genetic underpinning. That means एक foundation होना जरूरी है. There is a foundation which is laid either because some member in the family somewhere far in the tree has had it. इसलिए आपको, you have a tendency. Then you have had numerous traumas in childhood. What you perceive as trauma, your trauma may not be same. But generally, alcoholic parent, abusive environment, dysfunctional families, drug abuse very young in a child, all this will modify the brain such that later when stress comes, love failure हो गया, academic failure हो गया, किसी ने डांट दिया, that is enough to trigger off a mental illness, enough to push a person to a suicidal act. So mental illness is not a narrow view. Look at it broadly. Look at it medically because of the foundation. Look at the other environmental things in childhood which are contributing to it, and then look at the current stresses. So therefore, we work in a group. I can't do it alone. I need Jayanti to discuss about the stressors and how they will be able to overcome them. But she needs me to ensure that the person, even after they complete the therapy, continue to maintain improvement because of the treatment of the underlying medical condition, right? We complement each other just like an ortho and a physiotherapist, a psychiatrist and a counselor. That is the way it is. Just to give you a physical example, okay? So medically, there's a lot of misconceptions about medicines in psychiatry. I just told you there's a huge spectrum. It ranges from small adjustment difficulties to severe schizophrenia. दवाई भी ऐसे ही होती है. There's a huge spectrum, lasting from a mild antidepressant to an antipsychotic, which is used to treat schizophrenia. And because there is a huge spectrum, because the symptoms vary, the side effects also will vary. Most people who come to us with common mental illnesses like depression, mild depression, adjustments, anxiety, mild to moderate OCD, these require medicines which hardly cause side effects. They will cause the same side effects which possibly a paracetamol will cause, or which your diabetes medicine will cause, or your blood pressure medicine will cause. But if the person is coming with severe schizophrenia for many years untreated, hearing voices, feeling suspicious, unable to, function properly, you have to put a stronger dose. And when you put a stronger dose, the effect will be more and the side effects will be more. But these are not life-threatening. No medicine is allowed into the market if it threatens your life. No medicine is allowed into the market if it has long-term effects of damaging your brain. The whole purpose is to rescue the brain from the disease. Why on earth am I going to give you a medicine which is going to damage your brain? So please correct these misconceptions. Not all medicines cause weight gain. Not all medicines cause sedation. Not all medicines are addictive. But yes, if I give you a sleeping pill, like a few of my patients do, and say, please take it for 2 weeks and come back to me. They come back to me after 3 years and say, I have been using it all along. And you prescribe me 1, now I'm taking 10. Am I responsible or are you responsible? So be responsible in yourself also. You need to be responsible in your treatment. So medicines are not the ghosts that they made out to be. Ye bhoot nahi hai, right? Just as you want to keep your diabetes under control, you want to keep your blood pressure under control. Remember, it is the brain which is the center, which is regulating the rest of your body. You need a healthy brain to even keep these disorders under control. Stress kam karo, stress kam karo. Aap cardiologists bhi bolenge, diabetologists bhi bolenge. Stress kam karne ke liye, when you have a mental illness, दवाई की जरूरत है, which will actually help you further, not just your mental illness, but going to help the rest of your body as well. I'll be very grateful if all of you have heard this thing, break your barriers and spread the news around so that people do not hesitate to come to us for help when required. Jayanti, up to you now.
So very, very clearly and very, very categorically explained about the medicine and the role of psychiatrists and psychologists like that of an ortho and physiotherapist. Yes. So I'm going to talk about role of community, educational institutes, and workplace all together. So we are all a part of a community where we have all kinds of issues ranging from children not going to school to adults not going to work. Now, as a community, we are all responsible to help each other. The way we have all come together to help people with COVID, same way on a regular basis, on a daily basis, we need to work as a community to help people overcome mental illness. And the social support is very, very important, plays a very important role in recovery of people with mental illness. I have, as I was introduced as a lifespan therapist, because I work with educational institutes as well as corporates. Now here, when children do not go to school or don't want to go to school or are afraid of going to school or afraid of exams, Who all play an important role here? The parents, the relatives, the friends, the teachers, the school management. And as a team, psychiatrist and psychotherapist will work with this whole community of people. So child, parent, school. At school, teachers and management. And at the medical level, the psychiatrist and the psychotherapist. So this is how we will help and enable the child to overcome, be it learning disability, be it ADHD, be it autism, be it learning disability, depression, any of these. We all have to work together. Similarly, as Dr. Srilakshmi has said, schizophrenia exists. It is not a mythological character. It is a mental illness very much prevalent in the society, and a lot of people with schizophrenia are very intelligent. They are very good at their work. However, because of this illness, they are unable to perform, or they are unable to showcase their talents. At workplace also, there are facilities now available for mental illnesses, similar to where there are facilities for physical illnesses. However, you need to inform. Putting it under the carpet is not going to help. So there might be a person in an organization who would say that someone is always looking at me and talking, or someone is always following me, or so-and-so person is in love with me, without even talking, without even communicating. How do you know that? I know because of the way they look at me. Now, this needs to be examined. This needs to be referred to the psychologist in the organization and then taken up forward with the family. There is a cure and there is a management for all of these illnesses. As a community, we need to stand by these people who are suffering. So, how does counseling help? How does it support the medical treatment? A lot of people are willing to come for counseling and psychotherapy, but are not willing to take medicines. So as psychologists, we need to understand the physiology of the illness and the impact medication has on it. And so many psychologists, so many patients have come and said that we stopped the particular medicine because our therapist said it's not required. Therapists, believe me, do not have a complete knowledge of pharmacology. So we should not comment on that at all. So it is very, very important to be working as a team with the family, with the psychiatrist, with the community to help a person with mental illness. Now, I have talked about children and I have talked about adults working in corporates. There is this in-between population also getting very much affected by weed, as Dr. Srilakshmi said, by alcohol, by not having any boundaries. There are no boundaries. Everything is wavering right now. Everything is, what is good, what is bad. So a lot of parenting also is required. A lot of individual counseling is required. So this is how we manage. And as how Dr. Srilakshmi very rightly said, anyone can have a mental illness, can get a mental illness. It is just like a thyroid or a diabetes, and we need to avail the services of the psychiatrist and the psychotherapist and help each other, regardless of the fact whether they are in the lower strata or the higher strata. As we have in Roshni, we have free camps for counseling and medicine, and we have projects going on to get psychiatric help at the doorstep. So these kind of initiatives, whoever is able to take up should do that. So now I think I'll request Dr. Srilakshmi to talk about role of family in medical, in medicines, in how to give medicines and how to supervise medicines.
Yes. So there is this question. I will take it up along with the question, one of the questions in the chat box, which is very relevant. One question says, how do I help my family members and who are suffering from mental illness? And another says, how do I take them for treatment? Or third one is, where do I take them for treatment? All come under the purview of family responsibility towards a person having mental illness. So the first thing and the foremost thing you need to know is whether this person is actually suffering. When in doubt, err on the side of caution, right? which means if you are fearing that this could be mental illness, take a chance and take them for treatment. You don't want the illness to prolong. That being, where all can you get treatment? Medical treatment or psychiatric treatment is available in government centers almost everywhere. But mostly if you want to come in Hyderabad, it is Institute of Mental Health, Eragada, and also in Gandhi Hospital, where I'm heading, where I'm the associate professor there. And you have psychiatrists in King Koti Hospital. You have in most places you have. And now many psychiatrists are there in the community health centers also. So you approach any government hospital, you'll be directed. So the second thing is you can come to private organizations like us. There are many hospitals. There are hospitals which admit patients in the private sector. There are clinics like us who run OPD setups. There are single psychiatric clinic setups. You can look up various sites to find out where they are. You have this Indian Psychiatric Society, Telangana State Branch of Psychiatrists website. If you can just open that, you will find your psychiatrists in your respective areas. Also, now the question is, my family member is not willing to come for treatment. What should I do? This is a question which often family members ask. I want to ask this family member, if your patient is suffering from AIDS, shall we say, or even cancer, or even tuberculosis, or even typhoid, a simple thing like typhoid which is treated by antibiotics, will you take them to the doctor or not? If they say, I don't want to go for treatment, will you not convince them and take them to the doctor? If necessary, would you not drag them to the doctor? It is exactly mental illnesses are like that. We are very afraid that if we take them to the psychiatrist or a counselor, they may feel bad and the condition may worsen. It is not so. Sometimes for them, it is a huge relief that the third person is actually able to understand what I'm saying. You know, there's such a lot of pain in me, and I'm able to express, and the other person is able to understand what I mean, is a big relief for them. And when you walk into a clinic with your patient, no matter how you have convinced them, taking over becomes the responsibility of the mental health professionals, and we help you from there onwards. We make the person comfortable. So in your mind, if you think it is an illness which requires treatment urgently, you will use whatever means to save the family member. So please treat all mental health conditions with equal importance, on par with physical illnesses. I'm sure you'll be able to get them. Other thing being, in a family, as a family, you need to be supportive. Supportive means being aware of the symptoms, taking them for treatment, ensuring that the treatment given is being taken regularly, ensuring that you are in contact with the doctor to ensure that the doctor knows what is happening and you're a sort of liaison between the patient and doctor. Reducing your emotions and expressed emotions specifically. That means not criticizing them too much or saying you're a waste fellow, for you my life is spoiled. That increases. They're not responsible. No, they can't help it, right? So that is one thing. Or getting over involved. Acha, tune piya kya beta? Tune soya kya beta? Where did you go? Where every minute you want to monitor. That is over involvement. Don't do that also, right? Try to maintain a balance. Supervise without hovering over them. Be kind. Be compassionate. Be empathetic rather than being sympathetic. Every time the patient cries and says, I'm feeling very bad, if you sit along with the patient and cry, then the patient asks, where else will I go? Who else will I share with? If you are also crying along with me. So be that supportive, strong family member who's non-critical, non-judgmental, and also supervising when necessary. So I think the first question is answered, that my brother's suffering from, it was a direct question to me, that my brother's suffering from severe mental illness. Where do I go for treatment? How do we overcome depression? I think we have already understood that at the end of this talk, that depression is a medical condition which needs both addressing of the underlying medical condition as well as dealing with your stressors. So a team of psychiatrists and psychologists both will be able to help you. If it is depression, you will know it because it will not allow you to work. It will not allow you to function as a normal human being, and all the time you're low, crying, and unable to function. If it is a momentary sadness, it'll go away on its own. So please make a judgment call and visit your neuropsychiatrist. Yeah. So how do we help when a depressed patient refuses therapy or treatment? This is what I've already answered. And overcome fears also, I think. Okay. Yes. Very relevant question. Somebody said it's a cost of medications which are very prohibitive and therefore becomes a burden, which absolutely I agree, because many of our medications have to be taken for long term. It's not like an antibiotic which you will take for say 3 to 4 days and finish it off. So you may have to take it sometimes for years as well. That is why government hospitals are there, which provide free medication. However, if you're a middle class, well-to-do person who's actually able to afford medical treatment, but do not want to do this because you don't want to waste your money on medicines for mental illness, then that is not done. Because if you had diabetes or you had high blood pressure, you would have certainly taken the medicine, right? No matter what. One of our professors used to say that ek chai ka cup band kar do aur ek dawai le lo in a day. So it is necessary to treat your mental illnesses on par with the physical illnesses and treat them equally. Sometimes people have severe depression. They have uncontrolled diabetes, uncontrolled hypertension. No matter what the physician does, they don't get controlled. And then they finally land up with a psychiatrist after many years. The medicines come, the stress goes down, they're able to better manage. And many times these diabetes and hypertension start to come under control. So depression is not just something which is affecting your mind. Mental illnesses do not stay confined to the mind, unfortunately. They spread throughout the body in the form that they control other functions, as because the brain controls other functions as well. Okay. So somebody made a remark. I think this is not a question. Most people have someone on whom they are emotionally dependent. And when no solace it comes forth from them, they sort of reach a dead end and go into further depression and have suicidal intention. Okay. Now, my thing to you is, if you are having suicidal intention, not you or anybody else around you, it is no longer somebody who is depressed because somebody did something, right? It may have triggered it off. Like I told you, there needs to be a foundation, there needs to be other external factors, and this trigger of purpose not responding to you emotionally. Today, if my husband does not respond to me emotionally and does not fulfill my needs as a human being, am I going to jump off the building? No. No, I am much stronger than that, aren't I? So that is how you should think. If you're getting suicidal thoughts and you have attributed it to some stressor, understand that you have an underlying tendency to go into depression, and suicide is an emergency. If you're having suicidal ideas, it's an emergency. The only way we lose our patients in psychiatry in our field, and especially, is because they commit suicide. We're a very sad, unfortunate occurrence for us. It's very traumatizing for the family and for the treating doctor as well. Okay. So if you are suicidal, please treat it as an emergency and immediately come for treatment. Okay. Okay. If anybody family member is suffering from, if Jayant is not yet joined us, okay. If any family member suffered from mental trouble, then how family counseling will be beneficial for them for recovery? When a person has mental illness, we educate the entire family. That is how we do it. They come to us, we understand the illness, before we explain the illness to the patient, if they have the capacity to understand, we explain to the entire family of what this is, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. We tell them about the importance of medication, how it is going to go forward from here. So very essential that family involvement is there. And yes, family counseling is one of the very important factors in recovery. Okay. And yes, family counseling is done. Can you send me your number of your institute? You can contact Roshni. I think it's there everywhere. They'll help you. Okay. An alcoholic never responds to family member's advice for de-addiction or come to psychiatrist. How can it be managed? See, that's the problem with almost all mental illnesses, and not just this one. Alcoholics can be, if you threaten them, usually this is the approach that I take, that if we threaten them, blame them, scold them, they don't come. If we treat it as a medical illness, or we look at other conditions that this alcoholism is causing, liver kharab ho gaya hai, the jaundice is rising, or they're having blood vomiting, you point out that this could be because of alcohol. Let us at least go and treat your liver condition. From there, the doctor takes up and explains to them and makes them understand. It's a long process. We keep counseling them on the OPD basis. We give them medication to help with their craving. We understand why they are drinking and try and help them. So de-addiction is a huge field. Various reasons can cause drug addiction. Getting to the doctor is your responsibility. Taking over from there is our responsibility. You may have to use the excuse of another physical illness sometimes. And because they may not listen to you when you say alcohol. Okay. Ma'am, how do I know I'm mentally fit? If you're able to write that question and interact in the seminar, you're absolutely fit. Don't worry about it. Or at least as fit as I am. Okay. So, okay. So what are the mental health disorders? What are the mental health problems which can be observed in a patient? I've already told you that severe mental illnesses, okay, let us put it this way. What is the difference between normal sadness and depression? What is the difference between normal fear and anxiety disorder? Whenever you're sad, and it lasts for a very small time, and is beach mein agar khushi bhi aa gayi, suppose your pet died and you're very unhappy. In the meantime, you got a 1 crore lottery and you're feeling very happy. It is normal sadness. If your pet died and you're unhappy and it has triggered a depression, no matter if you get 10 crores, you will not be happy. You'll say, "Arey, kal to marna hi hai, what will I do with this money?" right? That is the difference between sadness and depression. The profundity, the in depth of the emotion is depression. The depth of the long duration when it lasts is depression. When nothing makes them feel better is depression, and it is affecting all aspects of their life. And for clinically, if you want to know, if it should last at least for 2 weeks. So that is depression. Similarly with anxiety. So the crux of the issue is any symptom which is stopping you from functioning as an individual in your professional, in your personal, and your social sphere, you are probably suffering from a mental illness and you need to come and take treatment. Okay. So I want to spread the cause of spreading awareness. Who should I contact? Please contact Roshni NGO. They're doing a tremendous job in spreading awareness. Okay. How can we prevent any suicidal tendency person having suicidal thoughts? Organizers, I will keep taking questions till you interrupt me. Okay. So first thing about a suicidal person is, that is why we run a suicide helpline. Roshni Trust runs a suicide helpline where if you get with the purpose that supposing you got a sudden suicidal thought and you have nobody to talk to, right? You pick up the phone and dial Roshni helpline. There one counselor is there. They have the timings. Please check out where they will talk to you until the impulse comes down, which means you have a little time to relax and say, chalo koi baat nahi, I will wait for some time. Okay. I can wait and I can, let me think of alternates. If there's a door closed, maybe there's a window open. That may not have been my answer. So that's the way it is. Okay. Medicines is compulsory for every anxiety patient. If it's compulsory, how many times, how much you take, lifetime you have to use, complete recovery. Okay. This question is, depends on the severity of your anxiety. If it's a so this question was, let me read out to you again. If I have anxiety or if anybody has anxiety, how long is medicine compulsory and how long? So this again depends on the severity of anxiety. If suppose you had a transient anxiety to a situation, probably other methods, counseling, yoga, meditation, exercise, diet, everything will help. But if you're so anxious that you're not able to function, you don't get to sleep, you're very worried throughout the day, you're on the edge, any small thing that happens, you're frightened, you're trembling, then you have an anxiety disorder and it requires treatment. How long is no psychiatrist can ever answer you correctly because it is an individual response. There are patients who have responded in 2 months. They have patients who have responded in 1 year. They have patients who have required it for a lifetime. So it depends on a lot of other factors, like are you suffering from any of the medical illness? Are you using a substance? Is there an underlying personality? Is your nature an anxious person, which is making you feel like that? So, and nature we cannot change, right? So there are many things that come into play when you talk of or decide about medication. What I do generally is, once the severity of the situation comes down, for a person who needs long-term, say, I will reduce them to the minimum possible, keep them only on suppose on one tablet only, and then make them take for a long time. That way it becomes easier for them also. So just pop in a pill and feel happy. And this does not cause to any kind of addiction. See, going to a doctor responsibly prevents all addictions. And all medicines are not addictive. Sleeping pills taken indiscriminately will be addictive. But a antidepressant is like a diabetes drug. Insulin come here low, na? You're taking from outside. No. Similarly, in depression, some chemicals are not working properly, because of which you need to take from outside. Okay. Anything else?
I think we'll move towards closing the session. And
yes.
After 12, if there are more questions and if you are available, we can take more questions after 12. Ma'am, I have one question I would like to quickly address. Yes. Ma'am, we are talking about the inequality when it comes to mental health. Yes. We have seen, probably in women, and specifically to mention the age group, 40 and above, where the kids have also gone out to study. There's just couples, or in any scenario, especially to mention the homemakers. Yes. So if they are at home, they are dealing with so many things at once, right? And generally the family do not understand what they're going through. They have so many emotional stress. There's so much of physically they are tired, emotionally they are tired. So and the family do not understand. The husband don't understand. The family doesn't understand. They're just like, okay, you are just being, why you're so irritated, just calm down. And it's not addressed, and that keeps on increasing, and that keeps on affecting their physical health and mental health. How do we address those kind of inequality and those kind of issues when it comes to women?
Very nice question, Prerna. 40 post 40 homemaker. I generally don't address them because somehow the focus always goes into the elderly or patients suffering from severe illness. But these are the silent sufferers, and no doubt you have highlighted a very good group of people. Now, there are 3-4 factors to be considered in such women. One, that this is the age where they start getting other physical illnesses like diabetes, like blood pressure, high blood pressure, like thyroid. Okay. So is this causing the symptoms? Because all of them can cause similar. So we first look at that. Second, this is the age where menopause is fast approaching. Are they going into a perimenopausal phase? Are they suffering from that effects? That also we see. Third, this is the major, most important age of getting depression. Women are 2 times more prone to depression than men. And the most common age for women to get depression is between 30 and 50. So 40 is the crux where they can get into depression. And finally, this empty nest is what you're saying. Children have flown away the nest. Mother's life used to revolve around the child, and suddenly they have nothing else to do. So to such mothers who are simply suffering from loneliness and not from depression, I say that this is your second lease of life. Learn, or you have left your life behind for your child. There were many things that you wanted to do when you were younger. Possibly you wanted to be a dancer. Possibly you wanted to be a singer. Possibly you wanted to paint. Start that now, no? And today with the COVID, so many innovations have come up. In the privacy of your room also, you can dance and nobody will see you, right? So live your life now. This is your chance again to live it. So this is every situation, like Jayanti has now connected, so she'll tell us, every situation has 2 alternates to it. Either I look negative and say this is the end of my life, or I look at it extremely positively and say, look, hey, look, I got a second chance and let me utilize it completely.
So yes, as the question says it all, like a lot of people have lost lives and jobs and everything. And so the basic formula, usually, when I talk to people about this, is resilience is the key to a balanced emotional state. You have to be resilient. And what is the formula here? COVID is an event on which we do not have any control, but we have control over the response we give to it. So we cannot control the event, but we can respond in a more positive manner. That is what is resilience. We have to tell ourselves, this too shall pass. We are living. We have educational qualification. We have some abilities which we can put to use. And definitely there will be anxiety, depression. But if we can reach out and talk to therapists or to psychiatrists, then whether you will know whether there is a clinical aspect to this depression, or it is situational, or can some things be worked around the situation to make it better. So always remember, how to react or respond to any situation is in the person's hand. And resilience is the key to emotional well-being. Continue to do whatever you're doing, your daily workout, you're talking to the people, helping others, reading books, catching up on some courses. There's so many free courses. Develop your skills, develop your abilities. Take up a cause. When we see that there are other people who are in far worse condition than us, we should feel blessed that we are alive and we do not have any physical disabilities. So we can still use our intellect, our eyes, our hands, legs, and do something to swim when the tide is against us. So work on resilience. And if you have any doubts, if you have anything, we are just a call away. Mail us, call us, text us. And if you cannot come, we can have online sessions also. But do talk, do open up about your issues. So I hope that helps. Any other question?
There's something about bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder, often people who are affected are very intelligent and articulate and appear to lead a very normal life. In my experience with a family member, anytime we even suggest that there is an issue that may need addressing, they start getting very aggressive and start alienating us to a point they do not allow any kind of dialogue to take place. What can be done in that situation?
You want me to take it, Jayanti?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So bipolar disorder, if they are alienating, aggressive, unwilling for treatment, forceful admission is necessary sometimes. Either you convince them, if you cannot convince them, admit them forcefully. This is a life-saving measure. Do not hesitate. The law of the land has various rules in the way in which you can admit and how long can they be admitted without their consent. There are a lot of things to be known there also, but that's a different talk altogether. But the patient needs to be admitted and treated. Within 4 to 5 days, they'll come back to normal. They will understand that something has been going wrong, and they will understand and start taking treatment further.
There's another question. If a person is not able to forgive people for lifetime who have mistreated him, is that normal?
Yes, it is normal, but at the same time, the person who carries that emotional baggage is the one who is more suffering than the person who has given that injury. So it's better to use emotional regulation or mindfulness techniques to let go of past injuries. So I would like to narrate a small story here about a monk and his student walking across a river. And monks are supposed to be sannyasis who have given up on, Maya and all of that. So when they are walking across the river, they see a woman bathing who is about to drown. So the Guruji, the senior monk, he goes and he lifts the women and he puts her across, takes her across the bank to the bank and lays her down and keeps walking. However, the disciple is very, very upset that how can my Guru do this and how can he touch a woman and such a big catastrophe is about to happen. It's such a big sin and all that. He carries that burden all through till they reach their destination. Once they reach the destination, the Guru realizes that the disciple is very upset and he is angry and he's all of that. And then he asks, "What's it, my boy? Why are you so angry? Why are you so upset?" He said, you are the reason, you are the cause. You have picked up a woman, you have touched a woman, it's such a big sin. And the Guru simply smiles and says, "You are still carrying her? I left her 10 miles back." So it is not easy to forgive people who have hurt us, but we are doing more damage to ourselves by carrying that load, by carrying that anger. We need to let it go. And there are beautiful mindfulness techniques which can help you to let go of these anger. It's better to forgive and move on. People who hurt us, they move on. They lead a happy life. Why should we be sitting there thinking about them? They are not at all important. Always remember, you are important. Yourself is important.
I think we'll take one last question, and I think it's very important for today's generation, if I may say that. Procrastinate. How do we deal with that? Because we have noticed if there's someone who's very active and is very organized, if the procrastination take place and they get all sorts of anxiety that we have not, done our work on time, and then it's like a dominoes effect. It continues. How do we deal with that?
There is another very nice question.
I think all this is your questions only now, Jayanti.
Yeah, so procrastination, when there are no timelines and when there are no targets to achieve, people tend to procrastinate. And that word itself is so nice, and people feel proud to say that I'm procrastinating nowadays. So it is not an illness. It is just that some people work on external pressure and some people work on internal pressure. So there are ways in cognitive behavior therapy to help people to overcome their procrastination. So, and also you must know that procrastination can be an indication of other mental health issues like depression or ADHD or personality issues. So that needs to be checked. We cannot generalize and we cannot give solutions to procrastination without knowing whether it is sheer laziness or there is some emotional block or mental illness. So if it is pure procrastination, then you can have other people around you, like someone who can motivate you to complete your tasks. Okay. And usually the important things people do get done. Important things which are important to our day-to-day life, they do. We eat, we cook, we sleep, we wash clothes, all of those we do. But then if there are some targets like going to the bank and all that, we avoid. So that's okay. But if it is becoming a very big problem, assignments are not getting submitted, or at work there is a problem, there will be an underlying depression or an anxiety or a fear of performance, some mental health issue which needs to be assessed and checked.
Yes.
And
On that note, let me take a, if I may interrupt you, Jayanti, for a second. If
yes.
you have to also ask yourself, are you anxious? Are you procrastinating because you're afraid of failing? If I don't do it, I don't fail. So I have the excuse, I didn't fail, right? So that's one first question that you should ask yourself. Are you afraid of completing the task because you're afraid of failing? Please check that out also, in addition to all the extensive information Jayanti is giving you.
And to talk about children and the mobile addiction and the social media and all of that, I think we are the culprits as parents. We are the culprits. We have given them all the facilities. And earlier on, we used to tell them that stay away from gadget. But now the education is happening on a entertainment medium where children used to get entertained. They're having to study. So there is going to be a fallout or a fall down in their scores and in their academic achievement. But I think it's perfectly fine if you're able to be hands-on parents and teach them some life skills. Academically, they will pick up when the school begins. Now they will be late, they won't wake up on time, they will not switch on their webcam, they will not all children can attend online classes. It's extremely frustrating to sit in front of the laptop where you're supposed to play, but attend classes, focus on that and study, especially children who are used to physical activities. It's very, very difficult. So even as adults, we find it difficult to sit in front of the laptop and work 24/7, not talk to team members, not go out for a tea. So it is there. We need to find a via media. We need to find time when the whole family will not be online. We'll switch off the internet and sit together and eat or go out and try to have some physical activity. So that is how we need to deal with this kind of a situation wherein we find a balance. Like if you are telling our children that you do not do gadgets and we are doing it ourselves, then that doesn't make sense. So work pressure and deal with people. Oh God, this is a lot to answer now, isn't it? Now we are run out of time, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. If it is important, we can take one last question.
How to deal with work pressure and deal with people of higher position who misuse of this is not our question at all.
So
but probably you need to learn assertiveness, learn to be more assertive without being without insulting or being rude. Take a stance for yourself. If you think you're right, you need to express and you should not put up with any kind of nonsense from anybody. You want to add, Sri Lakshmi?
And leave your work behind here in the workplace and come home.
Yeah.
And when a boss is misbehaving with you, wo banda pagal hai, not you. So don't worry about it. Think like that. No? It's easier. It's easier to see. Either you can change the situation. Being a subordinate, you cannot change the situation. You probably lose your job or something worse can happen. So what do? You have to accept the situation. You accept by saying that isko to kuch aaj BV ne data hoga, that's why he's like this with me. It is not me. Please understand, do not internalize such things. The minute you start thinking, is it because of me? Did I do something wrong? Is when your worry starts. You say, uska hai. It is easier to deal with life like that. Kisi ka bhi ho. That's ending it on a lighter note, actually.
Thank you so much, ma'am. With that note, we'll close the session. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.